Welcome to Changing Higher Ed, a podcast dedicated to helping higher education leaders improve their institutions. With your host, Dr. Drumm McNaughton, CEO of The Change Leader, a consultancy that helps higher ed leaders holistically transform their institutions. Learn more at changinghighered.com. And now, here's your host, Drumm McNaughton.
Thank you, David. Our guest today is Tom Rowe, president of Pine Manor College in Massachusetts. You may have heard about the merger between Boston College and Pine Manor College 2 years ago, but what they have and are doing is truly amazing, especially in the areas of ensuring high schools and first-generation students are college-ready. Tom is yet another president who came from a business background, and it truly shows. Not only has he turned around Pine Manor College, he's led it through a transformation to where it is profitable by getting it to define and focus on its mission and value proposition and on execution, things that higher education institutions should focus more on. Tom, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Drumm. Glad to be here.
Oh, we're glad to have you as well. You guys up there at Pine Manor College are doing something that I've not seen any other higher education institution doing, and it's come out of your merger 2 years with Boston College. So before we get into all these unique things you're doing, tell us a little bit about the merger, if you would.
Happy to do that. We call it an integration. And the reason why is because we weren't exactly just pushing two institutions together. We were trying to figure out how they could grow from each other. The big message there is Boston College, a long history of being a well-established research institution. Pine Manor College serving a different demographic, first-generation college-capable students. How could we put together a future that would make sense for both institutions? So we had to think through all the pieces of that to ensure success all around. Pine Manor College has a long history of serving first-generation students. 85% of our students were students of color, 84% first in their family going to college, 80% Pell Grant eligible, 50% multilingual. That's very different than the traditional Boston College student. So the question was, what would it take to create something good out of these two institutions coming together? And so that's what we did. And I think we've launched a really good set of programs to make that happen.
Well, it sure sounds like it. Now, why BC?
Well, that's a really good question. Pine Manor College, when I first got here, was considered financially fragile. And indeed it was. It had 20 years of losses prior to my arrival, losing $2 to $3, $4 million a year. So it was in trouble. But it was doing something that was very, very important. It was serving this first-generation low-income demographic. And it needed to be accelerated, expanded, magnified. That was my view anyhow. So we came here and we said, what can we do to fix things? And we spent time focusing on what we were really good at, which was serving this demographic. And started peeling away the things that fit under the heading of a traditional college, but weren't focused on serving these students who we believe so much in. We wanted to be investing in them. They had capitals that weren't even being recognized. They could speak more than one language. How many people do you know who can do that? They had an incredible persistence. They had an aspiration and vision for themselves that few of us have spent much time really focused on. And we wanted to figure out how to invest in those things, just as one does in any startup, to create some great outcomes, some productive citizens, some people who believed in supporting their communities and bringing the rest of the community along, some people who become research scientists, professors, presidents, and all the rest of it. And so what we wanted to do was kind of help the place strengthen, but it was financially fragile. The smart part, I don't come from higher ed, I come from business, was to figure out what other revenue sources we could generate. And initially, we started looking at auxiliary services because we wanted to make sure that we were an affordable college for the students we were serving. And we were very smart. We went out and repositioned the portfolio revenues. 53% of our revenues in the end were coming from auxiliary services, and that was all funding the college and the cost to attend for students. And we were very proud of that. COVID came. And suddenly all those auxiliary programs shut down. So it wasn't such a wonderful model after all, but it was a good idea.
Oops.
As every entrepreneur knows, you have to start somewhere and you got to make a go of what you have. But we knew that this was a risk. As I said, the college was financially fragile when we got here. We knew that there were challenges. So we always talked about plan A and plan B. And this was the whole community. This is the faculty, the staff, the board, the community at large. Plan A, let's make this the best college to attend if you're a first-generation low-income student. Let's make sure that if you come here, you have a better outcome than anywhere else. We were serving at about the national average of graduation rate. We grew that to almost 4 times the national average, just slightly over 4 times the national average.
Wow.
So we were very excited. We did it quickly. We're small. We could do that. That was important. That was our plan A. All the things we had to do to make the college financially stable, to make sure that it was providing a good education, that the outcomes were terrific. Everybody was getting a job within 6 months of graduation in the fields that they were interested in or going on to advanced studies. So we were very happy with all of that. Plan B was, what if we get hit by something we're not expecting, some disruptor? Who guessed, right?
Yeah, risk management at its finest.
That's right. If you believe in your students, if you believe in your people, your faculty and your staff, then you have to have a plan B if you're a financially fragile institution, because you don't want them to be stuck. And so the board, the community, myself, we sat down and said, what is it that we would worry about if something went wrong? Well, we wanted to do 3 things. Take care of our students, take care of our people, and take care of our mission and legacy. And if we could sort of figure out what that would look like, then we would be doing the right thing if something went wrong.
Okay. So that really brings up a lot of questions for me. So to backtrack a little bit, when you came on board, you needed to stabilize the finances.
Yes.
Absolutely. You used your business background to refocus, to bring in alternative revenue sources, outside things that some institutions do, but they probably don't do them to the same extent that you do. And you needed to figure out who your student actually was, not who you wanted the student to be, and then what was your value proposition with all that?
That's correct. Some of these things in many ways have been going on. We're in process. The question was, could we focus on the things that mattered most?
And so one of the big challenges that most institutions have when they're looking for a integration partner or merger partner or whatever is you can't be absorbing somebody else's debts. Okay. So getting your institution to where it was financially stable was incredibly important.
Incredibly important. It reduced our outstanding debt situation. It helped us to strengthen our endowment, our fundraising capabilities. We went from nearly 0 to multi-million a year because people were interested in what we were doing. As we strengthened our brand, as we strengthened what we were known for, serving this traditionally underrepresented community, people wanted in on it. We started calling them mission-aligned donors. They wanted to be part of what we were doing because they realized it was important. And particularly in the Boston market, there weren't that many people doing this.
How long did it take you?
Well, I've been here 6 years. So maybe it took 2 years to sort of get everyone on the right track and focus for what was important. And for what is important is really critical to any organization. It isn't particular to higher ed or business. Every organization needs to do it. So when we say we're going to make sure we're serving the students who we have as our population, what does that mean? Well, in our case, it meant things like making sure that we weren't a traditional college in the way we handled things. If we want to serve first generation, we have to recognize their parents are not going to be familiar with the things that colleges want them to do. They're not going to be comfortable with financial aid forms. They're not going to be comfortable with letting their children make decisions on their own sometimes. They're not going to be used to the sorts of things that colleges just expect. They're not going to know the vocabulary. There are a whole bunch of things. And so we had to really ask ourselves how we were going to address those things to make sure these students could succeed. And a very simple step we took was to change the job description for everyone in the college, top to bottom. The first line of everyone's job description reads, "The purpose of this position is to grow the graduation rate." Retention. Once you're here, we need to make sure you succeed. No sages on the stage, right? This is about teaching and learning. No artificial headaches and barriers that make us happy because we understand it, but you don't know what the heck we're talking about. It's trying to figure out how to make learning happen so that these students succeed. It dramatically changed things. I'll give you a quick example. We asked the financial aid department, what can we do to help you to help grow the graduation rate? They made it very simple. Hey, look, we're locked in our offices. We only have desktops. We sit here and we wait for students to come for appointments. If their job gets in the way, if a family crisis gets in the way and they can't make it, their parents don't speak English, the parents can't talk to it, we can't spend time with them, then 9 to 5, what are we going to do? Give us laptops, they said. Give us laptops, we'll go into the community. Give us laptops, we'll go into the student center, we'll set up shop there. Give us laptops, we'll call them from home, we'll make it happen. We can help you grow the graduation rate. They put a thermometer up in the student center. Everyone needs financial aid. Every time somebody signed up, the green thermometer went up till they got 100% completion. Think of the number of students that ensures can show up in the next registration.
That's amazing. And, it reminds me of a typical change management perspective. Mm-hmm. You've got the output. Right underneath that, you've got the processes, you've got structures, and then around it, the water, you've got the mental models. Mm-hmm. You changed the mental models, and you changed the structure by giving people something simple like laptops to where they could change their processes. That's brilliant.
Take the classroom. The college had a long tradition of focusing on student success. The question I put forward to the team here was, what does that mean? What is student success? And we got comfortable saying it meant all kinds of things. But as a college, only one thing really means student success. First of all, did they get their degree? Second of all, can they get a job with that degree or go on to higher advanced education with that degree? So we took the time to peel those things back and say, let's get crisp about what we're really trying to do. Let's make sure that the outcome the students need and that they came here for is what they get, not something else. And that really helped, that helped crystallize everyone that it was about the educational process, that it was about graduation, that there was no, one faculty member said to me, you're asking us to do social promotions. And I said, no, I'm not. Nobody said give up on rigor. We said be rigorous, but make sure you teach, you use good pedagogy in how you get them across the line. That's a big difference.
Mm-hmm. So faculty is always a challenge, or it can be a challenge at times. How did you get them to shift their mental models?
Well, I think that it isn't so much that faculty is a challenge, it's that we all have to give each other respect for what we bring to the table. And I think that sometimes we like to get in each other's space about what we're good at. And I really believe that our faculty, brilliant, they've got the skills, the competency, the passion, the devotion to the students. What I needed them to do was join together in a common mission with the rest of the college about what we were trying to accomplish. So if your vision was not to make sure the student was able to accumulate all the knowledge you wanted them to accumulate in the classroom, we wanted you to ask you why. Why were only X% passing in your class? Was it that the way the material was presented? Was it the issues? Now, some of them pointed out that sometimes you bring us students who aren't qualified. Ooh, let's talk about that. Let's make sure our admissions process is bringing in the college capable. Readiness is a different issue. Can we support students whose readiness is at a different place, but who are capable? So we developed an admissions rubric that helped us to look at character, persistence, and aspiration. Those were the table stakes. They had to have those things. And then let's see where they are academically and whether or not they're in the capable category. That helped everybody. The faculty was much happier. They were much more willing to engage. They were willing to try more things. They knew they had support. We created the Student Success Initiative. That meant that we looked at students holistically. If they can't live healthy lives, happy lives, they're not going to learn. So we need to make sure that there's the surround support they need. Everybody got a success coach. That meant everybody had someone who was academically supporting them, and everybody had someone who was life supporting them. What are those things that are getting in the way of you showing up, being ready? What can we do to help you with those? Navigation skills, all sorts of things.
Yeah. So, Tom, with faculty and with everyone, getting people on that same page, that shared vision, is one of the critical things that institutions need to do. And it seems like you've done a really good job with that. Were there any real keys that you used to get people there?
Well, I think it's doing your homework, and I think it's listening. Doing your homework means spending the time to really understand what you're about. So often we get lost in what we're about, who we're serving, why we're doing it. Other things distract us. And what we want to do is make sure we go back to our roots. So often in corporate entities, companies start doing all sorts of new things. If they're smart, they go to their finance team and they say, which one of these things is actually making us money? If they're smart, they go to their marketing teams and they say, which one of these are really selling? Does the customer really want? And they spend a lot of analytical time trying to figure those things out. Colleges and universities are not so good at that side of it. And what's important is to remember that it does all have to add up in the end. And the best thing that anyone can do is have a good reputation for what they do. And when you've created a solid brand for what you do, then people come looking for you. And you don't always have to be big to win. Pine Manor College is very small. And the goal was allow that smallness to create a very important, very intimate environment that we could be successful with students with. That made a big difference. One of the things we had learned is that when we went on this listing tour, for lack of better words, was what was important to the faculty, what they really wanted to be able to do with students, where they felt constrained. Same thing with staff. It was where they felt constrained. Sometimes we had put those constraints on ourselves because we wanted to be like every other college. We wanted to have the same structures, the same setups, but it wasn't really important to us. We had 3 senior financial people. We were a $20 million enterprise. We had a CFO, a controller, a director of finance. We didn't need all of that. We only needed to focus on how we were going to get across the line financially. And let's not get caught up in all these accounting structures that make it difficult for us to know whether we're succeeding or not, because that's a special language that finance uses. The same thing happens on faculty. The same thing happens in student affairs. So let's break it down. Let's break everything down to a place where we can all deal with it. That's how we get on the same page.
Mm-hmm. It reminds me of a study that Ernst & Young and the American Quality Foundation did a number of years back. And they said, there's multiple things that you can do to grow a business, but there's only 3 that will work regardless of where you are. Strategic planning with implementation, management, improving the depth and the breadth of your management practices. And lastly is doing business process improvement if it's focused on the customer. And that's exactly what you did.
Mm-hmm. I think the first thing you mentioned is particularly important because one of the things we often get caught up in is the importance of doing big things. The reality is if you don't get the small things done right, you'll never get to the big things. Those small things will trip you up. If we don't take away the unnecessary headaches of life, we won't get on to the big things. So help people to do that. Organizations have to look at themselves and say, how do I get rid of that? Once those headaches are gone, everything runs smoothly and you can focus. You're freed up to work on those really important things. Mm-hmm. Sometimes you have to do both at the same time, don't get me wrong. And that's a lot of work. But when you get through it, when you get to make sure the trains are running on time, then you can get the work done. Mm-hmm. If the internet's up and running, then you can get the work done.
Yeah. And that reminds me of Russell Lowry Hart, who's the president at Amarillo College. They brought in, you're getting the trains running on time. You're providing the services that students need, first-gen students need, folks whose parents never went to college. you're providing those things. Russell had a situation where he had 99 students in the middle of a term go homeless. And normally that means the student's going to drop out. No, they provided the bridge to the services that the students needed so they could continue. You're doing the same type of things.
Yeah. That listening tour is important because it shows everyone that they have value. And then it becomes important that you actually do listen to everyone. So it isn't just the people who are at the top of your chain. It isn't just the faculty. It isn't just the staff, right? It's the community you serve around. It's the community that sends you their students. One of the things that I did a lot was visit high schools. A lot of college presidents wouldn't think of visiting high schools. But when you do that, you build an immediate bridge to the people there who have students they want to place at your institution. You build their confidence about who you are. So what we increasingly did was made it all about the students. Well, when the crisis came, we had been talking already because of our Plan B to multiple institutions, making sure they knew who we are and what we did. So there was a high level of familiarity. So then the question was, who thought that they could help us deliver on the three objectives we had? Take care of our students, take care of our people, take care of our mission and legacy. Well, quite honestly, we weren't sure whether that was the route we wanted to go in terms of working with another college, or did we want to sell all our assets and become a large foundation and then fund these things in a very efficient way, right? Could we fund scholarships? Could we fund programs that worked on the same mission-oriented things that we believed in? Or should we partner with somebody? And I think in the case of Boston College, there was sort of a little luck and a little important desire. Boston College is nearby. Most of the colleges are in Boston, right? There are lots of nearby colleges. But they had also begun their history in serving the children of immigrants. Right? This was their focus. And they created a virtuous cycle. You know, they brought these young folks in, children of immigrants, they got them through, they helped them get jobs, they sent their kids. Next thing you know, they were paying for their kids to go. Next thing you know, they were sending extra money, and they became a well-endowed, very successful university. And it took time, it took a lot of hard work, it took a commitment to mission. And I think that when Boston College began to talk to us, we had developed this brand of excellence for the demographic we served. And they wanted to be deeper into that game. They wanted to return to roots that said, we can do this too. And the beauty of Boston College is they have enormous resources to do this. So the question was, well, we can't just merge these two institutions because the students are very different. What can we do? So what we agreed to was a 2-year teach out. So any student at Pine Manor College who wanted to continue at Pine Manor College and could graduate in the time left, they would be taught by Pine Manor College faculty and staff, and they would get the chance to do that. Or they could transfer to Boston College, to the Woods College, the continuing education program, and get a BC degree. Or they could transfer to one of 5 other partnership colleges that we established relationships with, and BC would ensure the same net costs for students. So there'd be no increase because of this change that was going on. So it was a great way of taking care of students.
Mm-hmm.
The faculty and staff were given the opportunity both to do the teach out, so an extended period of time where they knew what was going to happen at the end. They were alternatively offered, if for any reason there wasn't a position at BC that they were interested in, they were able to perform at, there'd be a very extensive severance package. So there would be a big bridge to mitigate change, the impact of change. And then we got to the question of mission and legacy. How could we ensure that what we were about would be the same thing that BC would be about? And what we agreed to was to create the Pine Manor Institute for Student Success, recognizing that beginning the pipeline to higher education at senior year in high school was not enough, was not generating enough students with opportunity. We decided to create a program that would extend from the 8th grade through the 12th grade in this cohort of students' own schools tutoring, emotional, social support, focused on helping them be ready so that when they get to college, they're ready and capable for a Boston College experience. That beyond that, they'll get throughout their college career a success coach built off the Pine Manor College model. And after college, get 2 more years of support, navigational skills, budgeting skills, networking skills, all the things they need to deal with what a first-generation student has to deal with when they graduate from college. So this creates 10 years of support for this cohort of students.
Wow.
No one else is doing that.
No. And they put serious resources behind
They
this
put
as well.
serious resources. We started with an initial endowment of $50 million, which is now doubled to $100 million as of a couple of weeks ago.
Congratulations.
That's really big news. Well, on top of that, BC said, we want to go further. We really want this to be an important part of our mission. And they've decided to additionally create a 2-year college, residential, on the Pine Manor College campus. They're going to call it the Messina College. Boston College was founded by Jesuits. Jesuits were a religious order started to promote the faith through education. And the first school they ever opened was the Messina College in Italy. And so Father Leahy, President Leahy of Boston College, is reconnecting to those roots that way.
Nice.
What he learned was that what was so successful at Pine Manor College is that we were a residential program. So it created a safe space for students to separate from so many of the things that hold them back academically when they're in this demographic. And he recognized the importance of that intimacy. And so he wanted to recreate it. We also had proven that it took 2 years to take these college-capable students and ensure that they were ready and as competitive as any other college kids. And so this creates that vehicle. So now you have 2 significant pipelines of access to higher education to traditionally underrepresented groups of community. Mm-hmm. And so we're very excited about that. So we were able to take care of our students, take care of our people, and take care of our mission. And it was overwhelmingly and almost unanimously valued by the Pine Manor College community, the community around us, the Boston community. So we feel very fortunate to have found such a partner who said, we want to do this and we want to do more.
This is amazing. And like you said, this has not been done by anyone. There are some institutions who have reached back into high school. I know Grand Valley, Philly Mantella is doing something like this to find out what folks want. There are others who've created community colleges, 2-year residential. But to be able to do both and use that not only as a funnel for students to be prepared to go to BC, but for other institutions as well is just amazing. Now, from a cost perspective, how much does this cost a student to go through this?
It's not going to cost them anything. So the whole perspective here is that this demographic needs this kind of resource. We haven't invested enough in them as a society. We haven't made sure that they have all the resources they need to be on a level playing field with everybody else. So the goal here is to make sure that they have what they need to be successful. Now, BC is an extraordinary place. President Leahy is extraordinary. He's got the golden touch. I mean, this guy can find the people who are mission aligned in a way well beyond what we could have done as Pine Manor College on our own. We like to think that he has magnified the mission of Pine Manor College by doing this. You have people who believe in the social responsibility. That was a big cultural importance in putting this together. A lot of places wanted to talk to us about things they could do, but the sense that there was a shared set of values was missing. And so here, it was beyond just educating students. It was recognizing the whole student and the whole set of responsibilities it took in order for the student to succeed.
That is so important, and it is probably the single biggest thing that's overlooked in any kind of merger integration is the cultural fit. It's gotta be the right mission, but the culture has to work as well. And kudos to you and Father Leahy for being able to recognize that and pull it off.
Well, The devil's always in the details, right? And doing
Really?
those small things right is so important. And that's where we go from here, right? We have the shared vision, the shared mission. We have the resources. Now we have to do the work. And that'll take time. And we won't get it always right every day. But Boston College has ways that they know works with students that we have traditionally served at Pine Manor College. We know what has worked.
Mm-hmm.
And what we're going to do is figure out how to bring the best of that together. And I think the Pine Manor Institute for Student Success at Boston College will do that.
I think you're absolutely right. Tom, I've enjoyed this thoroughly. We are getting to the end of our time here. I could probably talk for another half an hour easily, but I need to respect your time. 3 takeaways for your fellow presidents.
First of all, Drumm, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure to have the chance to share. College presidents have a lot to say. Not all of it is worth listening to. So I appreciate when somebody invites me to have something to say. I think the first most important thing for college presidents, board members, leaders of higher education to think about is the whole idea of Plan A and Plan B. Unless you're an extraordinarily well-endowed college, unless you have such high brand recognition that everybody wants in, then you're going to face some challenges going down the road. They're either going to be resource challenges, they're going to be change in life challenges, the Great Resignation. There's going to be things that happen that they're going to be disruptors. And they're more likely, if we look at any other industry, they're more likely to happen more often than they did. So you need a plan A, what you want to do, what you have a vision for doing, and you need a plan B. What if it doesn't work?
Risk management 101.
Be front and center about it. Make sure everybody knows this. Sometimes people on our team forget that we actually do need students to pay the bills. Most colleges are, 85, 90% dependent on tuition. So what are we going to do? The second part is really that transparency or communication piece. Communication really does have to be 2 ways. Every successful business leader knows that if you go to the source, you ask the people on the line, the manufacturing line, or you ask the customer, you're going to learn a lot. And when you do that, you're going to be able to help your team reframe what they do. Spend the time. I know we all have PhDs. I know we all have, lots of experience. But set aside the time to visit high schools and listen to high school students. Find out what they're really saying. Meet with those parent groups. Find out what they're really saying. Plus, you'll be a big deal when you go. I went to El Paso one time. They had the mariachi band greet me. They had, fiestas of all kinds. It was incredible. So you'll get treated well, but you'll learn a lot if you go and ask them, why isn't it working for you? What would make it a better experience? So I think the first one is Plan A and Plan B. 2, go to the source. Start to understand what's really happening from the people who are affected by it. The people who work for you, the people you want to come to your institution. And the third thing I would say is always lead with mission and values. You can pick up hundreds of annual reports from colleges and see mission statements that sound very much the same. We're all going to help make people smarter. We're all going to better our community. But figure out what it is that you really do and who you're doing it for. Many colleges are the most important entity in their community. The most. Do you have real relationships with that community? In non-traditional relationships, not just you pay, for the annual firefighters event or whatever, but that you have a real relationship that connects your impact on the community with their impact on you and where you go with that. Mm-hmm. And there's a whole bunch of ways that you want to think about mission and values. And just make sure they're always the lead. That's what you lead with. Every meeting, every initiative, do they actually tie back to that mission and actually tie back to those values?
Yep. What you do, how you do it, who you do it to. If you don't know that, you don't have any business being in business.
Higher education is an important powerhouse of resource for our nation and for the world. And we're wise to treat it respectfully and to do the things we have to do to make sure it succeeds.
Amen, brother. So, Tom, what's next for you? What's next for Pine Manor College?
Well, I guess the cards are still being played. My sense is that the best thing to do for me is always to look for the next best way I can have some positive impact. And so that's what I'll spend my time doing. BC's been very good to me. We'll see where it all goes. But for me, I love a challenge. I love to try to figure out what I can do next to add some value.
Very good. Well, Tom, it's been a real pleasure having you on the show. Thank you for your time and your wisdom, and best of luck to you up there at Pine Manor College.
Thank you, Drumm. Best to you.
Thank you. Thanks for listening this week, and a special thank you to this week's special guest, Tom Riley, president of Pine Manor College in Massachusetts, and for his insights on the unique merger and resulting plans for Pine Manor College.
Changing Higher Ed is a production of The Change Leader, a consultancy committed to transforming higher ed institutions. Find more information about this topic, along with show notes on this episode at changinghighered.com. If you've enjoyed this podcast, please subscribe to the show, and we would also value your honest rating and review. Email any questions, comments, or recommendations for topics or guests to podcast@changinghighered.com. Changing Higher Ed is produced and hosted by Dr. Drumm McNaughton, post-production by David L. White.